Hello, I'm Angelina and welcome to 15 Minute Trainer. I hope you enjoy our taster module, Managing Change. Now, the one thing that is certain about life is that it's very uncertain. We lose or we change our jobs, our relationships can be very precarious, and a crisis can hit any one of us out of the blue. Change is inevitable, whether it's forced or whether it's something that we choose. We still get some feelings of unease and uncertainty. It can be very positive for us though, and it's an opportunity for us to grow. Depends on how we view it. But for other people, it can be something to be really feared. And I've known one or two people who've become paralysed by change. I'd like to introduce you to 3 interesting ideas about change. The Kurt Levine's model of unfreeze, change and refreeze. What happens to us when we do change? And I'd like to make reference to changes in the workplace. And finally, to look at changes within our relationships. As you can see, this idea is modelled on a block of ice. So in order to change its shape, we have to totally unfreeze it. Then we change it into water, ready to reshape it. Once we know what the new shape is to be, we refreeze it. But it's important to know why we need to change, what needs to happen, when it should happen, who should be involved, and maybe where and how it should happen. So how can you apply this to your own life? Let's say, for example, you want to get fitter. In the unfreeze process, you'd be looking at reasons why. So is that because you want to lower your blood pressure, to get some better muscle tone, to look and to feel better? In the change process, you'd be looking at actual ways of doing it. So it might be 30 minutes times 5 times a day of walking, swimming on a Sunday, yoga on a Saturday. So the change process is about the concrete ways forward. And in the final stage, the refreeze stage, you take each of these new ideas, these new habits, and you start to implement them one by one. Now, what happens to us when we go through the process of change? It's not a comfortable experience for many of us. We can feel awkward, something doesn't feel quite right. We naturally want to move back to the familiar, back to our default position. We have a sense of unease internally. That can be a bit of worry, anxiety, or even depression, especially if we're not told why the change is happening and how it's going to affect us. We mourn for the loss of the past, of what was before, and it is like a grieving process. And there are 5 stages of grieving process for any loss. Denial that it's happening, we get angry because it is happening, we get depressed because again it's affecting us internally. Then we start bargaining. Look, if I do this, can we go back to the old regime? And eventually we reach a process of acceptance. The avoidance and denial can be a big problem in the workplace. Managers tell staff we're going to have to make changes, this is what's going to happen. But staff just seem to carry on as they did before. They don't want to face up and acknowledge it. And also, we put limits on our own ability to cope with change. It's like, my goodness, I can't take any more of this. It's all too much. Managers need to take all of this into account. Whilst they're implementing change, yes, they're looking at their organisational needs, but they need to be looking at the needs of the people, of their staff, and manage change in such a way that people can cope. You need to know your staff well, know their personality and know how they might react to change, who embraces it, who will go with it, who's really frightened of it and will need extra support. So the key message here is to involve staff, to consult with them and not to impose changes on them. Now, when we talk about change, it's often in the context of the work environment. But what about change in our personal lives, in our relationships, with our friends, our family, and of course with ourselves? We're all changing all the time. It's a process of growth and development. We find we need space for ourselves, time to explore our own identity, and that can put pressure on relationships. And two people who came together maybe in their 20s are not the same in their 40s. If you find that your relationships are starting to crumble and you need to address them, there are 5 things that you can do. First of all, you need to stop yelling and screaming at the other person, and let's face it, we know that this goes on because that's a sign of conflict, that change is happening, we don't want it. We certainly shouldn't be threatening people with what we're going to do if they don't do something we want. Change will not come about naturally in that way. And if we go on and on criticising them, hoping that they will change, they will just go completely the opposite way and dig their heels in. We shouldn't be accepting bad treatment because we're frightened of change, and to use silence as a form of stonewalling so that we're not going to accept the fact that things are going wrong and that change is required is really a form of bullying, and it's not going to make anything better in a relationship. So finally, how can we approach change? I've got a few ideas here. First of all, let's just accept it's part of life. It's inevitable. And it is difficult, but we can see it as an opportunity. Have the knowledge that whatever happens, you can cope. Keep an open mind. Look at the possibilities that change might bring. Know that as a result of change, you will grow and develop and become a different person. And have a degree of acceptance. We can't put the brakes on change if we really want to live a full life. It's been my great pleasure to bring you a taste of one of our online training modules. I'm Angelina Bowden, founder and presenter of 15 Minute Trainer.